Hey there, my name is Adam. I'm a business school student at the University of Virginia. A lot of my friends are in their first year of grad school and they have interviews coming up. They're hoping to land roles in industries like consulting, tech, and finance. And when I went through that exact same process 2 years ago, I developed the following mental model to structure my preparation. Hopefully my tips today and my way of thinking about behavioral interviews will be helpful to you too. Essentially, my unique insight is that most people over-prepare for questions like, tell me about a time you failed. And they sadly neglect two different parts of the process, which are equally, if not more important. In my view, there are 4 parts to a typical behavioral interview. Small talk, walk me through your resume, questions the company rep has for you, and any questions you have for them. Parts 1 and 4 are the sections where most of my friends have been underprepared. Part 1, small talk. When you walk into an interview room, what's the first thing that happens? You talk about how your day has been. You get a golden opportunity here to set the tone. Have a topic in mind you want to discuss. For example, one of my friends had an interview coming up with Microsoft, and over winter break, he went to Disney with his family. So, when the interviewer asked him if he enjoyed his time off, instead of simply saying he went on all of the rides in Orlando, he responded by talking about how he was fascinated by how integrated all the technology was across the theme park. Now that's a strong start. The takeaway is that he brought his fascination for the tech industry into something that happened in his life. One way to improve this even further is that most companies will tell you who your interviewers are if you simply show up early on the big day. This will give you an opportunity to quickly look up their LinkedIn profile. If I was interviewing you and you found my profile, you would immediately see that I care about social impact. When describing how your weekend was, it would be an excellent idea to highlight the fact that you volunteered the day before. You wouldn't need to say anything creepy about having stalked my online presence, but you did get me interested in comparing notes about the causes we each care about. Great. Skipping ahead to the end of the interview, part 4, I believe that concluding an interview on a strong note is insanely important, but also overlooked. Anyone can Google a handful of standard questions to ask at the closing of an interview, but there are 2 questions I recommend you always ask. Your first one should be about the interviewer's background. This serves 2 purposes. People love talking about themselves, and it gives you an opportunity to stall, pulling out the rest of your questions. Even if you didn't get a chance to look up the interviewer's LinkedIn profile while you were in the waiting room, I'll bet they almost certainly told you a little bit about themselves before diving in today. And your last question should always be about next steps. For whatever reason, it feels rude to simply say you don't have any additional questions, so ask what to expect in the rest of the process. Oftentimes, you won't get a chance to ask a ton of questions, but if you do get the opportunity for more, there are 3 ways to effectively develop a fantastic question. First, name drop the people who you've networked with. If you spoke with someone else on the phone or in person before the interview about this company or about this role, bring up their name. It shows you've done your homework. Number 2, do a lot of online research, but make it efficient. I often hear about students reading 10Ks, which are long documents that corporations put out about their finances. But come on, those are hundreds of pages long and really boring. A faster, more authentic way to get to know about a business is by watching YouTube videos. That's right, whether it's the CEO giving a TED Talk or simply the company's career channel sharing customer stories. Videos are my favorite way to get up to speed quickly. Third and finally, you should never ask a question if you don't care about the answer. For example, watch how I structure the following question. At my old firm, we had something called 10% time. It was an expectation that every employee spent roughly 10% of their work week improving the culture or being innovative. The way I did this was by getting involved in the employee resource groups. What are some of the ways you and your colleagues like to pay it forward? See how much stronger that question is than simply asking, tell me about the culture? I clearly cared about what the interviewer told me, and I took notes on their answer. Notes I can use to figure out if I actually want to work there, and notes I can use to easily write a thoughtful thank you email later that day. Again, I think most folks over-prepare for parts 2 and 3, so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on those. For part 2, you should have a 60-second explanation for where you've worked and why you're excited about this interview. And for part 3, there's a ridiculous amount of information on the internet about the most common behavioral questions you can expect. In my experience, it's enough to have 8 go-to unique stories to answer the following questions. A time I failed, a time I had to influence someone without having authority over them, my biggest strengths and my biggest weaknesses, a conflict I resolved, when I analyzed a large data set, an ethical dilemma, my leadership style, and my proudest professional moment. The reason I made this video is to help you nail parts 1 and 4. Those sections sometimes get neglected, but in my experience, they are the best ways to stand out and leave a good impression. They kick things off on the right foot, show you've done your research, and make you memorable. Having your 8 stories ready to go is certainly important, but those will only get you into the middle of the pack, not the front. So, please let me know if you have any feedback about this video, and I'll address it in the comments. In the meantime, good luck in your job interview.